was recorded. Okay, there we go. So thanks for jumping on, everybody, this morning, or if you're watching this as the recorded version, appreciate it. This is the third quarter emergency management online training that we're offering through CSU Extension. This training is available to anyone. It's not just for Extension staff, it's for the general public and any of our partners who might want this information for each of our individual trainings. If you would like the training, you're more than welcome to join our emergency management work team through CSU, or you can contact myself, which is Beth Hayes. I am the CSU Extension State Emergency Manager Coordinator. So you're welcome to reach out in either direction and we can get you going. So with that, we'll share our presentation here and we'll get rolling. Right. Okay. Just gonna make sure our audio is going to work right, as I do have some videos in this. Okay, so here's some of the topics we're going to be covering today. Is we're going to be talking about why would you have a CART, a CART versus a CERT. Some of the Colorado CART teams, we do have one of our partners from the Colorado Department of Ag on here as well, so we're going to briefly mention them. They will also be at our October forum meeting, so if you have questions for them, if Jerry's still on at the end, you're welcome to ask him. If not, then he will be there in October with us as well for our Thursday meeting. So let's talk about why this really all came about. So CARTs kind of really ticked up in appearance throughout the United States after Hurricane Katrina in 2006. And that was because there were so many losses from that one disaster event that the federal government realized that people aren't going to leave without their pets. And that's where the Pets Act actually came from. But you have to remember that only covers for domestic animals. So this is like cats, dogs, things that live in your house that are considered more on that pet side, not necessarily livestock animals. And this was even just a big change in general, because in Katrina, there's an estimated up to be around 250,000 animals that were lost during that one particular disaster event, which is quite a lot. If we turn that number around and we look at Colorado to see how this could impact us, over 65% of people in Colorado have a minimum of at least one animal per household. And there's around 55 Colorado residents that, of Colorado residents, so about a little more than half of our state claim to have multiple animal and multiple species in one household. So those numbers go up really quickly when we think about our state as a whole. I'm from Pueblo, so I picked that population as an example. So in 2024, our population was around a little over 111,000. So if we do the math based on the numbers given, for one animal, that's 72,000 and change animals, and multiple animals of multiple species, we're looking at over 55,000 animals. And that's just my county, and we are not by far the largest county in the state of Colorado. So that's where these numbers start to matter, and why having a CART is vital, because the numbers start to add up really. Regardless of your size of your county, you need it, because there's a lot of animals to take care of and a lot of different species to handle. And then of course, ag is our second biggest economic driver in our state. So that's the other big piece of this, is that on the livestock side, that's where a lot of our agriculture sits in, and we really need to protect that from an economic and a financial standpoint. So I just like to show this video because it's a pretty vital one, and it explains why having a livestock CART team ahead of time is pretty important, because if you don't, then unfortunate things can happen. So we'll just watch this quick video. It's an older one of a fire that happened in California, and we'll just give this a watch here.
Watch now, Land of the Bible. Immerse yourself in biblical science.
¡Salte! Dios mío, mi cuadra. ¡Abríganos! ¡Ábrele! Hay que soltar los caballos, ¿ah? Hay que soltar, hombre. ¿A todos les abro? ¡Que les abríamos! ¡Ábrele! ¡Que les abras!
Whoops, sorry, but I thought doing that would just turn my video on for myself off, not the whole video. So let me. Oh, it's not playing. Okay, good to know. Thank you, Jerry, for letting me know. Let me see if we can fix that. Okay. Is it big on your guys' side though? Like, is it full screen when we were in it?
No, it wasn't in present mode.
Oh, it was still in the small mode. Okay. It wasn't sharing the right screen then. Okay. Let me go back then and see if I can. Thank you for letting me know, because I would not have known. Okay. Okay, let's try this one more time. Okay. Okay, are you guys seeing the presenter mode or the individual slide mode?
Individual slide mode, not the presenter mode.
Okay. There, is it big screen, full screen now?
How it is. Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Apologies about that. So, and then we will try our video here again.
Build a website you love with Wix. For your words,
¡Salte!
Just pausing it for a second. Jerry or Megan, is the audio coming through for you this time?
Yep, it's all working fine this time.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Now we'll go back to watching the video.
Dios mío, mi cuadra. ¡Abríamos! ¡Ábrele! Hay que soltar los caballos, ¿ah? Hay que soltar, hombre. ¿A todos les abro? ¡Que les abríamos! ¡Ábrele! ¡Que les abras! ¡Salte! ¡Sálganse! Mama. Come on, mama. Come on. Come on. Come on, mama. Ven. Ven. Afuera. Ven, mama. Come on, sal. Salte. Mama, sal. Se salió. Come on, papá. Salte, abre. Quítate. Quítate. Vete, güey. Ya me voy, güey. Salte, güey, a la verga. ¿Estás bien? Come on. Come on. Ven.
So I like to share that video just because it kind of highlights, the importance of having trained staff who know what to do in an emergency. If you don't know, for those that may not know, so horses will go back to where they feel the safest in danger, and that includes going back into a burning building or a burning barn, because to them, if that's where they've been, that's what they deem as safe. So even though they can see the fire, they're in fight or flight mode, they will still run back inside the fire, and that's where we lose a lot of horses, because once that ceiling gives out or something, they end up trapped inside. So unfortunately, in this particular video, at the end, if you saw that there was like a brush truck that came around for to assist this barn for this particular fire, there was a second brush truck that you don't see on video that came around the corner. At this point, there was like between, I think reports said between like 60 and 80 horses, because there was like 200 plus horses on this property. Some of the horses ran around a blind corner. They hit the broadside of that brush truck, and they did knock the truck over, which did end up trapping some of the firefighters and ended up killing some of the horses. So it's just, if you have a plan ahead of time for large livestock, especially when you have large numbers, that's really important, so that people can be more prepared of what to do when things go wrong. So that's kind of a good one to look at. So, as probably everyone's aware, but just really quick, one of our bigger concerns in our state is wildfire. It's been an issue already this year in 2025. We have other disasters that are always present in our state, but wildfires normally are number one, followed closely by some winter disasters, and then flooding, and then some other ones farther down the list. But for some just basic wildfire knowledge, if you don't know, in a grassland situation, fire can get up to 14.27 miles per hour and around 6.7 miles per hour in a forest, because obviously the terrain's a little different, and the plants that it's burning, it burns a little different. Trees burn differently than grass does. Obviously, the worst conditions are when it's dry and windy. But what's really interesting is that fires move faster uphill, with like a 10-degree increase in slope actually doubles the fire speed. So most people would think that, running uphill would slow fire down because it has to climb, things like that, but it actually increases its speed. So it's another important part when we think about wildfire in our state, and how, like, if homes are more on the top of a hill versus on the bottom, they're gonna get they can get worse damage from a fire than if they were somewhere else from a geography standpoint with fire. And then I just wanted to show this map here from the Colorado Newsline. This is acres burned by Colorado wildfire since 2006. The light colored one here on the end, that is obviously 2025. I just have some of the years circled because I wanted to show that we really haven't had that much acreage burned, even though, like Marshall Fire, some of these others have happened in this time frame. But as far as acres burned, we really haven't had a ton. And this was through August 18th, 2025. So this isn't even, the Lee Fire isn't even captured in this particular image here, which is now our 5th largest fire in the state. So that, this shows that we're really on track to be a lot higher in acres burned. And we've already surpassed quite a few other years that have come and gone. So trends are likely that, especially with October coming around, we might end up seeing this graph go a whole lot higher before 2025 is over. So then this video, I wanted to show it. It's an older one. So the time frame, she says it's like 2 years old, but it's I think it's 3 or 4 years old from the Marshall Fire from this video. But this is from Fox 31 here in Colorado. They're a news station. But I want to show how fast fire happens, because everyone thinks, oh, I don't need to build a cart or have a plan because I don't live in a rural area. I don't have horses or chickens or ducks. But it doesn't mean it can't happen in an urban place. And carts can even help with domestic pet side, which is just as important. And time really becomes a factor when we start talking about the impact of fire, whether you're in a rural area or if you're in an urban one. So this one just shows a really good timeline of why it matters to have those plans in place, have your team in place before anything happens, especially even in an urban setting.
Watch now, Land of the Bible, in a new series. Explore the places.
The date was December 30th, the time 11:05 a.m. That's when Mountain View Fire was first dispatched here to Marshall Road and El Dorado Springs Drive and found this, a shed on fire with winds whipping at 100 miles an hour. As it spread, it was officially named the Marshall Fire, and it started destroying structures almost immediately. 33 minutes after that first 911 call, the first evacuation orders went out in Old Marshall. Body-worn cameras give us an idea of just what they were dealing
Okay, apologies. My computer froze out for a second and shut down for a hot minute. So I apologize. Looks like we're still recording, which is great. I will get us back into our presentation. Again, I apologize, having some technical difficulties this morning. Okay, let's see. So, okay, so back we go, and I will go back to our video. I'm just gonna make sure the audio is back on again. Okay.
My name is Shelley Walker, and I was born in Colorado.
The date was December.
Skip us along here to where, closer to where we were in the video.
100 miles an hour. As it spread, it was officially named the Marshall Fire, and it started destroying structures almost immediately. 33 minutes after that first 911 call, the first evacuation orders went out in Old Marshall. Body-worn cameras give us an idea of just what they were dealing with.
Now out of Marshall.
Just after noon, the flames reached Superior. That's when shoppers had to be rushed out of Costco.
Move now, leave your stuff, go!
It's also when law enforcement had to pull people and pets out of homes.
Okay, you want me to help you get these guys up?
And when fire crews knew the Sagamore subdivision was in trouble. Evacuation orders went out at 12:06. 13 minutes later, the fire line arrived. They ended up taking every single house with it. By 12:50, the entire town of Superior was told to leave. But as people here headed for safety, the fire headed for Louisville. At 1:30 p.m., the entire town was put under evacuation orders. The next few minutes and hours were tough.
I'm at Monarch High School and I don't know where to go.
Okay, you're at Monarch?
Yes, me and a lady are here. We got trapped and we don't know where to go. I see the fire literally right in front of me. Holy
Do you know where we should go? Do you know where the fire is? Is it safe to go that way? It's getting really dark. Can I follow you guys somewhere? I'm so scared.
Fire department! Anybody home?
From 2 o'clock on, more than 200 firefighters from all over the state did what they could to try and save lives and homes. They spent a full 9 hours fighting the Marshall Fire in hurricane-force winds before Mother Nature finally calmed down around 8 p.m. By then, though, the damage was catastrophic. It took 4 days before the Marshall Fire was fully contained and out. It would be weeks to begin cleanup and months to start rebuilding. Now, a year later, the community is still in recovery, and there's a long way to go. No one knows for sure what that timeline going forward is going to look like or how long it's going to take. Ashley Michaels, Fox 31.
So I like to share that one just to give you guys a sense of speed of fire in a more urban setting. Sorry, we're trying to go to the next slide here. Get off the video. So that one it's just a good one to kind of show people that it can really happen anywhere. People panic very quickly. As you heard by that second time that the second evacuation order went out, then they had 13 minutes before the fire got there, and there was 171 homes that ended up being lost from that 13-minute time span. So that's a lot of people, that's a lot of pets, that's a lot of animals, and a lot of people panicking. So it can get really chaotic really fast, which again is why it's better to have a team and a plan in place ahead of time than to wait. So really quick, I just wanted to touch on what is a CART versus a CERT, as it's a common question that gets asked. So CART stands most of the time for Community Animal Response Team, and that's really focused on animal needs during disasters. So this might be, you might have heard about like the Cajun Navy that really got its going with Katrina and some other the hurricanes down there. They're very focused on helping people, but a lot of animals too. And then CERTs stand for Community Emergency Response Team, and these ones are more human focused, and they really look at human concerns and safety pre, during, and post disasters. So this can involve a lot of different training for both teams. So on the CART side, you know, it's very animal focused, transport focused, shelter needs for animals, things like that. There's some FEMA independent course studies you can take in regards to that. Same thing with CERT. But with CERT, they're going to focus more on like the human side of light search and rescue, personal preparedness, fire and hazmat safety, psychological first aid, and even terrorism awareness. So a lot of that has to do more with the human care and piece of it than the animal side. It doesn't mean that those trainings that you see on the CERT part couldn't be involved in CART, but again, it's going to be more focused on an animal perspective than just dealing with people. So this is where I started with my team originally with CART. So when I started in my current role, there had been a team, but it had been disbanded about a year or two before I really took it over. So I was just given a folder and said, good luck starting the team. So we started out with a smaller group that you can see here, and now we sit about 55 volunteers. So it's been a really, really awesome experience having to regrow it and rebuild the team, and has been a lot of fun. So the other big question is what's the benefit of having that when there's not an emergency? Well, it builds community preparedness. As you saw in both of those videos, if people are prepared a little bit ahead of time or practice this in their communities, they're able to respond better to real-time disasters, because we never know when that's going to strike. We've had fires in Colorado in the middle of December. There's never a true fire season anymore in our state. It's basically year-round. So the more you can prepare for any level of disaster, the better off you are. It does build a lot of lasting relationships in your community and in the team. For example, a lot of folks on my team, they are really good friends now with each other. They hang out outside of the team work. It builds a lot of camaraderie, just friendship and strength in your community that you would not expect in other ways. And then there's an opportunity for year-round activities, and we'll kind of get into that in the training section. You can cover fire safety and emergency education, which is really big in a lot of our areas. They get enhanced skills, and it builds a lot of confidence, because then they're more trained to deal with emergencies even in their own personal life, especially if they've not had prior experience. So throughout Colorado, there's a lot of community animal response teams, or CART teams. Every county's needs, participants, funding, it all looks different. So please don't expect that how Pueblo does a CART, or Moffat County, or El Paso, or Jefferson County, they all look different, and there's different rules and populations in every county. So it doesn't mean that there's one gold standard model to follow. It's whatever your community needs, and then plan from there and fill in the gaps as you go along. So this is just some examples of ones that are around the state. There's many more than what I have listed here. I would like to point out that the Colorado Department of Agriculture, Jerry Casebolt is on with us this morning. They do have a CART map, and you can find that. Jerry, really quick, I did try to find that. Is it just if they go to the CDA website, if they go to like the ag emergency, is that where that map is linked where people can see it?
I believe it is. I'd have to dig exactly where it is, but it should be somewhere on our emergency management page.
Perfect. So I would highly recommend that if you're starting out, trying to figure out what is the nearest CART team you could look at or talk to about how they've set it up, I would go to the Colorado Department of Ag's website, look at that map, and not only will it show you where they're at, but it shows you who runs that team. So whether that's Extension, that could be like in Jefferson County, it's the Jeffco Horse Council. In higher up north, it's the Posse. In Douglas County, it's the Sheriff's Office. There's a lot of groups that could run a CART team. It's not always held within Extension. So just things to look at. And if you have questions, both Jerry and Dan, who is the overall state emergency manager for CDA, their contact information is on that site. So if you can't find the map or you don't quite know, you can also reach out to them through email as well. So talking about what do you need to really get started with a CART team? So first you have to look at creating the program, right? Contact some partners, gain support from your local leaders, because a lot of time the funding, the grants, stuff like that can come from the county. So you want to talk to your county commissioners, you might need to involve the mayor. It kind of depends on how your area is best set up. Figure out what budget looks best for you, because that's going to talk about what funding and resources and equipment can you actually afford and buy. And if you're going to ask your team to buy their own equipment, how often can you provide equipment or trainings for them that are going to cost? Those questions all need to be kind of answered. And if you go to your local leaders, they're going to ask you about what kind of budget are you thinking you're going to need to get this team off and going and then to sustain it. Then you want to look at tailoring some training activities, and we'll get into that. Then you'll recruit your volunteers, and then of course get some instructors depending on what topics you want to cover. On this particular slide, this was our older version of our trailer, and that we have a bigger one now. But as you can see, we have a lot of equipment in this trailer that has been donated or purchased over the years, and we still use it quite a bit. We've been deployed over 30 times in the last 4 years that I've been in this position. So this trailer has gone through a lot of things. We've had to throw away some of these buckets because of chemical issues, things like that. So you start running out of items that you need to use quite a bit. So you really need to think about that budget. This whole trailer, the items inside, we've estimated this is about $12,000 of equipment that we have in this. Like this generator you see here in this picture, we've never even used this. It's brand new, which is awesome. It means it has a longer lifespan with us. We don't keep fuel in it for that reason and everything. It's strapped in. But a generator alone can be a lot of money. So you just really need to think about all of the things you need and where could you house it, who would be in charge of it, all of that good stuff. So along with those items we just talked about, this kind of goes more into the depth of now you need a cart, you really want to dive into who do I talk to? Where do I start, right? A lot of counties start with a steering committee meeting with the most important stakeholders. So this could be the battalion chief, fire chief in your area, or a couple of your fire chiefs, depending on how your fire districts are set up. Definitely meeting with your emergency manager. You might want to talk with your law enforcement officers. Animal law enforcement would be a good one to bring in. If you have any other humane shelters, if you have a zoo in your area, people like that are really important to bring together. And then of course you want to bring in the ag groups, right? If you have a rodeo club, if you have a corn growers association, anything like that, you want to involve them, especially even a watershed district or a conservation board. They're the stakeholders you want in the room because they're going to know where are the most critical areas in your county that would need protection from a disaster or recovery resources from a disaster. And they're going to have ideas, thoughts, and possibly even resources you might want to know about. So that's where you get them all in the room, invite them. You want to kind of go over a presentation like this. Explain to them what is a CART, what is the value of it, what does it take to get it up and going, lay out the mission, goals, and objectives that would matter most to your community, identify individuals who want to start it and help you kind of get it up and going. You want to collect all of their thoughts, ideas, contact information. And then you actually want to take it from concept to action. So you want to start doing things with a specific deadline to keep people engaged. It's easy to talk about this and get people excited and realize that, oh, this is an important item we need to discuss. And then it kind of falls off everybody's radar until the next disaster. So you don't want that to happen. You do want to give it a little bit more momentum. So you want to look at what CART structure works best for you, identify your resources that we talked about on the earlier slide, recruit volunteers, which we'll talk about, and then identify roles for the CART team, both in the general scope of your community and internally on the team. I show this picture here that is from our CART structure here in Pueblo. Of course, this is not meant to be one size fits all for every county, but this is just how we set ours up. Our specific CART team only handles livestock because we are covered by the Humane Society of the Pikes Peak region for domestic pets out of Colorado Springs. So we really focus on large animals or ones that are classified as livestock, which include horses. And you can kind of see how our structure is set up. So we base this off the incident command structure that everyone knows with FEMA training, which is why it makes it very easy for our folks to understand that. So at the top of the chain is myself. I oversee the team. Our budget, our resources, our training, our deployments, all of that is overseen by myself. We have oversight done by my county director and higher up the food chain on the extension side. And then underneath that is what we call our deputy ICs. So these are specialized deputy volunteers or other extension staff that is assigned to this in my county that then have higher responsibility, higher access to some things, just because if I'm not always available, there has to be someone who can take my spot. And it also helps with turnover and burnout if a disaster goes on for long enough. So this is all very important steps to have. And then what we did is, when you look at an ICS structure, there's things like logistics, operations, things like that that are underneath that immediate structure. What we did is we turned that into different roles that volunteers could fill. So we have like animal handling, paperwork, supplies and donations, and then transport. And we have a main volunteer designated to that piece so that they handle that main section. And then if there's issues, there's things that are in need, that information starts going up the chain so it can be handled. Instead of like everyone calling me or the deputies at once and flooding the phone lines, nobody's actually getting the help, the resources they need. So that's kind of why we set it up this way. And the only one we branched out farther was the animal handling. When we have a big enough incident and we have enough people on the ground, then we break it out by species. But if we don't, it's kind of not one we always have on hand, but it's a good one to look into if you have a large enough team and you have enough of a diverse species count that you might need some specialized training that not everyone may have. So this is just one example, but it doesn't mean this is the way you have to do it. All right, so talking about roles with volunteers, let's also talk about how you get them in the door. So I would say do booth events, and you can do these all over. There's community emergency and safety events. The month of September is National Emergency Preparedness Month. So a lot of firehouses and police forces will do different community events around these topics. I would encourage you to find out when they are. Ask them if you can set up a booth. Put out some information. CSU Extension has a ton of information about mitigation around your property, how to return to your home safely after a fire. We have a lot of post and pre-flooding resources. We have so much information that people could find value in that you could even just go talk to the general public. And then you can also get people interested in joining your CART team if you've already had that stakeholder meeting. Then use social media. It goes a long way, especially if you can make like a quick little video and get some buy-in from your county, which you'll see in the next few slides like I did. That's another great way. It's an easy way to grab people's attention, make them understand why it's important that they join and that this is for their community and it's a volunteer opportunity. And if you like animals, come out and learn. That's really all it is. So that makes it an easy one. You can host a lot of community education classes to gain interest. So again, if you are very familiar with fire behavior or FireWise or doing any kind of property mitigation, if you can host classes like that, people usually are that come to those classes are the type that might want to just go ahead and volunteer with you anyway for a CART team. So I would also have a list at that point. I would reach out to other agencies who already have animal interested volunteers, like a humane shelter, a horse rescue, things like that, that they already have a supply of volunteers who might want to just go ahead and join the team, who can be activated in a more disaster-centered situation. And then disasters, they're a really good way to actually gather momentum for recruitment. So if you're kind of struggling, a lot of people, obviously you want to focus on the disaster in the moment, but when you're in that recovery phase, things start to slow down. People are kind of picking up the pieces now. It's not in a danger time. That's really when you can start saying, hey, this is why we need to do this. This is really important because it will matter to people more at that particular time. A lot of people, like we said, will get excited about information like that, and then it drops off. I apologize for my phone going off. Let me just pause that. And then just be aware of volunteer cycles. Volunteers, it goes up and down with cycles, and that's pretty normal. You can start out with a really high interested group, and then they might stick with you for a year or two, and then life changes, right? And they're gonna step off just because of some life situations. That's happened within my team. I know it's happened with other CART teams. It's a normal part of just having volunteers, and you just have to be prepared for that. So this is a little PSA video that we put together for Pueblo County residents about our CART team with a couple fires that happened last year, earlier in the year, and to just let people know that what we do, why we're there, how to get in touch with us, and then how you can join us too, and then that we need your support. So we'll just watch this quick little video.
During an emergency, getting yourself and your family to safety is critical. Oftentimes, your family includes pets or livestock animals such as horses, cattle, poultry, sheep, goats, or pigs. Pueblo's Community Animal Response Team, or C.A.R.T, is here to help.
Hi, I'm Beth Hayes. I'm the Agriculture and Natural Resource Specialist for Pueblo County through Colorado State University. CART stands for the Community Animal Response Team. This is the team that responds to any livestock disasters in Pueblo County, whether that's a fire, a flood. We're the ones who come and help with transport needs, shelter needs, and everything else in between for all of our furry friends.
My name is Justin Youngren. I'm with Red Creek Volunteer Fire Rescue and also a volunteer with the CART program. One of the most important things with evacuation in an all hazards or a wildland fire is getting everyone out safely, and part of that is also their animals. Once they know that there's a place for their animals to go, we can assist them and evacuate both large and small animals.
This is one of our new trailers that was kindly donated with money from the county commissioner, so we really appreciate the money from Pueblo County. This is a community team. It's staffed by the Pueblo County CSU Extension office, but the rest of the team is made up by volunteers here in the community. They do rigorous training that's year-long, and that way they're ready for any deployment. Our most recent deployment was with the Vision Hills fire that happened in early April. We covered that one along with the Everaz fire, which was roughly around 3 to 4 days of full-on deployment. We took in a lot of animals at that time. You'll always want to look for the orange high visibility vest or our shirts, which you can see are brightly colored and say the Pueblo CART team. Without continued donations and support from the community and the Pueblo County commissioners, this team wouldn't be possible. If you want
Sorry, I had to admit Dan, and it
to donate or you want to become part of the team, make sure you give us a call at 719-583-6566 and we'd be happy to help you. When there's a fire or a danger and you need to get a hold of us immediately during an active disaster, give me a call directly at 719-251-0245.
So that one is just really nice because, like I said, it was
during an emergency
done with my county media page, and it's really helpful because then they broadcasted that, and it got such a higher level of engagement and really helped build my personal CART team because the county was backing it, and we got it out in a lot more shared spaces in the community. So if you have a media relations person, I would encourage you to talk with them. See what your capability is to do that, and just to make some videos, some public information pages, and get some information out there for them to know that CSU is there, that CDA is available. All of that is really, really important so that people can prepare more ahead of time instead of waiting until the last minute. So now let's talk about level of training, because we've talked about how do we get people in the door, where do you start, all of that good stuff, and training is a big piece of that. So how much training do you actually need to be competent? A lot of different groups do it on a very different basis. So some do it staggered throughout the year and only meet every couple months and do a couple trainings. My particular team, we train January through November, and it doesn't mean we're off in December or the rest of November. It just means that we're not doing active trainings because I try to give my team a break through more of the major holiday season. And then bring them all back at the beginning of the new year. So that's how we do it. But again, a lot of people, that looks different. I know for like El Paso, they do a training every month throughout the entire year. Jeffco is their horse council, so they're a little more active because of that. Their CART team is a subcommittee of horse council, so they meet a bit more regularly as well. So, but then on the other side of the western slope in like Montezuma County, I know they're only meeting every 3 months. So you really have to think about what works best for your team, what is the level of training they really need, and that goes back into your group size. How big of a group are you wanting to start with, or even aim to maintain, because that really goes into your level of training as well. The background of your participants will matter. If you have folks who have only been around cats and dogs and have never handled a horse in their life, they're probably going to need a little bit more training. However, if you have a group full of farmers and ranchers and people who work at the feed barn, they're not going to need as much because this is stuff that they do on the daily basis or they've done for a very long time. So they're not going to need so much as the basic stuff. They might need more high level education that you're going to have to bring instructors for. So you kind of have to pick and choose between that. And then types of trainings, you can offer classroom, tabletop ones. You can see in this particular one, we were doing one on emergency halter setups with different types of rope and webbing and things you can see in this picture. So we did one like this, and then we actually took this and went out into the field with livestock animals, and we had what I call organized chaos, where we had a bunch of loose animals in an arena, and they had to work in teams to use the material they were given with emergency halters to then catch them, to understand how that would work in a real situation. So you had to get comfortable with the knots, comfortable with the tying, and then you had to put your animal knowledge to test in a real world situation. So those are always really good. Tabletop exercises are really good if you can't get into the field. We've done those with our partners who are online with us with the CDA. Those are really good because you can involve a lot of stakeholders at once, get a lot of buy-in, and hear a lot of how different agencies are going to respond to different disasters. So those ones are really nice as well, which goes into like looking for partners to co-host training or share the cost. Code 3 is one that will do that. A lot of the domestic pet side folks like ASPCA has grants that they'll share with us. CDA is a great partner. Red Cross, the Salvation Army, have all reached out to Extension to partner to do different trainings and kind of share that cost load, or even cover it if we have enough people to help them meet a quota. So just be aware that there's a lot of opportunities, and you can even do it in an online sense as well, either through FEMA, which are some of the ICS classes we talked about earlier in this presentation, or Code 3, or many other sites that offer a level of online training for CART teams specifically. So animal education. This slide just shows some classes that you can provide both from like a classroom perspective, a field perspective, and doing a lot of them is really key. The couple that I want to point out on this slide is biosecurity, disease, and hazmat/decon training. From a biosecurity and disease standpoint, this is really important, and you can actually involve your engagement with your hospitals in your area. We've done that here in Pueblo because they didn't realize that there could be a large number of zoonotic diseases that aren't necessarily deadly to humans, but can spike during a disaster situation that people are going to wind up showing at the ERs with, on top of whatever disaster they're dealing with. So letting them know ahead of time and being able to be in communication with a hospital coordinator saying, hey, we know that we've had a spike in ringworm in our animal shelter for this fire. We're just letting you know that you might start seeing patients with that because people are coming in and out of the shelter situation to take care of their animals. That's good for them to know. So just, have some training on that, teach your team about why you care about biosecurity, how to do that safely, making sure they have equipment either from the CART team themselves or encouraging them to have it on their own personal sense, how to leave their clothes, all that kind of stuff. It's really important. And then the hazmat decon training, you just want to make sure you understand what is your role in that, as you might be asked by your fire department to be a specialist in that, things like that. And if you don't know what resources are available to answer some of those questions, then it can be a tough situation. So again, you can call with CDA. CSU Extension has a lot of experience with that and resources. So those are just big ones. And then really focus on what non-traditional species could you encounter in your county. And do you have a plan for them? A lot of people, so bees are considered a type of livestock, if you don't know. Some of us have really large areas of beekeepers, some of us don't. That might be one you have to chat about. Emus, bisons, buffaloes, and all the others listed on here are ones you can end up dealing with that are kind of in the realm of livestock, but may not be. It depends on what your area particularly looks at. And then non-legal items that could show up that you may not be qualified or trained to handle, such as like primates, non-legal wildlife in our state, which is like foxes, skunks, raccoons, things like that. Do you have a plan for that, and where are they going to go, especially if you don't have a zoo in your area? So just things like that. Emus are listed as livestock animals. If you're not aware of that, we do have like a lot of emus here in Pueblo County. You can see in our particular picture here, we had a couple emergency management interns from CSU that were vet students that came, and they also were working with CDA, and we did a lot of emu training because they're very different from every other like poultry species that we have. So handling them, understanding their behavior, things like that is extremely different, and it was very eye-opening for them of what to do with something that's not a traditional animal in the sense of emergencies. So, and we have a lot of emus in the state of Colorado. Many of you might have seen quite a few of them got loose, like in Lone Tree and stuff this year. So they can be a very different animal to deal with. Okay, shelter management. So these are just some ideas you want to think about of where you can go. The biggest question is always who has the keys? How do you get a hold of the person who has the keys? And then knowing what that facility has ahead of time, where the water is, where electricity is, can people stay there on site? Is there lighting? Where do you put feed and hay, manure piles? All of that is really important. And you need to really know all of this information before you ever plan to be at this facility. A lot of facilities in different counties are county-owned properties, or they might be privately owned, so that looks a little different. As of this year, CSU Extension now has a basic liability agreement with a private landowner that just explains that this is in use of an emergency situation. It covers both sides, so if something happens, nobody's getting sued, and that it's really just used for emergency purposes for animals. So that's new this year, and we will have that available if Extension is involved. So there are some ways to kind of help with some of those conversations. You want to know how many animals you can keep there and for how long. Know what the fencing type is at that particular facility for what species, because you might be able to hold a lot of horses, but you can't hold a lot of pigs, right? So you need to know what fencing you have will fit what animal species, and then also, can you provide enough space for different genders? Because if you have a bunch of studs near a bunch of mares and horses, that's going to cause some issues. So you have to keep all of that in mind, and if you're going to hold a bunch of bulls or a bunch of bison, that's different fencing needs than what you could get away with just like regular horses. So just some things to think about. You want to be able to practice at your spaces that you're going to shelter at, so that your team is aware of where all these items are, how to run it, who they contact at the facility. And then the other big question is, can you lock this facility up overnight, or is it not where you can do that and you're not going to have assistance from law enforcement for protection so people don't steal those animals, and you need to have some kind of 24/7 supervision, and how does that work? So just some questions you kind of need to think about regardless of where you're going from a shelter perspective. All right, so keeping plans in place. So you really want to think about, how do you get notified, right, when something immediately happens, like we saw in the Marshall Fire video. That notification happened, I think if I remember the video right, in the first like 33 minutes. So that's really fast. So is that a phone tree? Do you have a reverse 911? Are you using iPods? What is that level of communication? And does your emergency manager know to contact your particular team? So you kind of need to have a lot of these conversations ahead of time and know how these things work. And then you figure out which team members are going to respond, who is needed from your team, what equipment can you go out with, where is it stored, how do you have access to it, do you have team members for specific tasks like you saw with our ICS structure, all of these things. So it becomes really important to talk about a lot of these pieces before something happens, because in the middle of a disaster, this gets really out of hand really quickly if you don't know all these pieces in place before something happens. And then you just want to put it into practice. So you want to practice doing these with real people, real animals. So in my county, we do 2 yearly drills where we bring in community folks and we ask them to be actors. So my team knows there's a certain number of scenarios, but they don't know what the scenarios are. The actors get briefed. It's kind of like the rules of Fight Club, that you can't actually fight, and there's no physical contact, but otherwise they can get upset, they can cry, they can yell, they just can't get physically violent with the team. Because in real situations, as you heard, like on the Marshall Fire one with the people who were freaking out, not knowing where to go, people panic, and once they're in a relatively safe area, they might take out all of that adrenaline and extra emotions on your team, and people have to be prepared for that. And that also allows you to see where people may not be the best fit on the different tasks for your team, because they might say, oh yeah, I'm definitely a people person, but the minute someone yells at them, they might snap back, get really aggressive, and that doesn't help a situation, because really they should be able to de-escalate it, not escalate it. So that's why these drills are also really important. You find where you need more training, what equipment you need, what other errors you need to think about fixing. Then you can also bring in live animals. I can tell you, every single time we do a drill, there's always something that ends up being a live situation. We've had animals get loose in a real situation that we've had to handle. It got really windy during one of our drills, and big pieces of siding were coming off and hitting trailers and horses that were tied up that we were using during the demonstration that we had to handle. We've had dogs rush some of our livestock animals we were using that were loose on a particular piece of property we were on. So you always wind up with extra situations that you have to wind up dealing with, but it's also really good training exercise. So it's good to do these in the field, and it allows your partners to come and see what you do, how to prepare, and get their insight onto what could you do better or what resources could you look into doing. So that one's really nice. The last two pieces I just want to bring up here is transport and rescue. These two are like the biggest issues of liability and risk really for any team in the state of Colorado. So for transport, liability comes from that trucks and trailers or any equipment being used to haul animals is not covered in our state except by your own insurance. So if you're going to do that, you have to up your own insurance. So if something happens, you know, while you're going out to rescue animals, that's on you, right? And that becomes kind of an issue. Same thing with equipment in the transport space. If you don't have a appropriate vehicle, you don't have an appropriate trailer, meaning it's not licensed, the boards are uneven in the flooring, the wiring shot, whatever, that's a very unsafe situation that could wind up harming an animal that you're trying to rescue. So you don't want to allow just any type of truck and trailer combo. You really do want to vet them and make sure that it's safe for the use of that. And it requires additional training because in some of our areas in Colorado, you know, there's not solid cell service. So how are you going to let them know where to go, how to get there, if the fire gets too close to them, how are you going to let them know to leave? Like there's a lot of additional training and equipment that goes along into that, which is why you just have to put a lot more thought into how you're going to run that piece. And same thing goes into rescue. It's the same thing. There's a lot more liability, equipment, training that goes into that piece. There's the technical large animal emergency response group that does trainings across the United States and I believe even overseas with Dr. Rebecca. And she has a lot of really good PowerPoint trainings. I'm certified in her courses, and it really gives you a good understanding of how to work with other first responder agencies to assist when there's rescue needs outside of just like true disasters. You can see in this particular picture that this was this spring. We had a horse here in Pueblo County that got loose on this person's property, was running around. It fell through a septic tank cover. It was just like a wooden septic tank that was rotting, and the horse fell through it and fell. You can see she fell actually up to like right about here where this webbing strap is. That's how far down she went into the septic tank. So thankfully she went in butt first, so she fell the best way she could for the situation. They tried to dig originally to see if they could just get her to step up out of it, but it's a cement wall down in the ground, so there wasn't a way for her to come out of the septic tank. We did have to wind up getting a winch with a power truck pole that uses on the power poles, and then we winched her up because if you don't know, fire trucks are not designed to lift large animals or heavy weight. So if you do this with a fire truck, a couple years ago before I took the team over, they did try to do this in a similar situation and the fire truck flipped over because it's not designed for that. So knowing how to do this, knowing that you could use the hoses on a fire truck or that you need large webbing and where to attach it on the animal. We had a vet there, that's one of our mobile vets, who was able to sedate this horse a little bit so we could lift her up. You know, we had our eyes covered, things like that that they need to be aware of. It's really important. So it's a lot more extra training and a lot more certifications, honestly, to get through this. So it's not impossible. It's just, you have to figure out, is this really a need? And if so, how many people can you dedicate towards it? So these are just some resources that y'all can look into, whether you're watching this live or on the recorded version. So EDEN is a big one. EDEN stands for the Extension Disaster Education Network. It is a group of the different land-grant universities throughout the United States, and they do a lot of education and shared resources, mostly extension focused, but it can really be for anybody on a variety of disasters and what to do. So they will cover things like hurricane recovery, they'll do things on flooding, and it's from some of the largest impacted states. So like when the Carolinas got hit, when Florida gets hit, when Texas had those big fires, things like that, they all have representation from their various land-grant universities, and they provide resources that anyone is welcome to use, which is really cool and can help you get a lot of education in a community rather quickly, and you don't have to recreate the wheel. So I would encourage anybody to check them out. we do have resources from CSU for Colorado specifically. So this here is a screenshot from creating a community animal disaster plan, and it's broken up into, I think it's 7 steps, and they're webinars. So you can watch how to do this. They're older videos, but the content is still very viable. So again, I encourage you to find those. They're just available on YouTube. And then of course we talked about talk with your partners, talk with your neighboring counties to see how they have one set up. Look at that map with CDA. Look over your, what we call the emergency support function 11, which is where agriculture sits. Your county may not use the normal numbering system, so it may not be number 11 in your county. You'll just have to look for which one is labeled as agriculture and natural resources, as that's where livestock sits. And then domestic pets is in 6 or 6A if you're broken out a little bit more. And again, that's on the standard number system. Like Douglas County doesn't use that. I think Boulder, Weld, and a few others don't. So you might just have to look through the plans to understand where they fit if you don't use the standard numbering system. And then we do have an older video. It's called Saving Pets, Saving Lives from Extension. It's a longer video. It's around, I think, 16 minutes long. It's a good one to show to, again, get that buy-in. So if you have that stakeholder meeting, that would be a good one. We're looking at revamping that one just to make it more relevant to today, because a lot of the information in it is a little dated. The disasters are a little dated at this point, so we're just going to update it, but you can still find it and still use it. And then once we archive it, you'll just be able to use the updated ones. So that is our quick one. Again, I apologize for some of the technical issues we had. From our partners, since we have the CDA folks on here, Jerry or Dan, and Dan, I know you're driving, but if you have anything you would like to share, because Megan's done a lot of work in Moffat County, and if you guys have anything you'd like to share on behalf of CDA as resources or things for CART teams, we'd love to hear from you real quick.
Thanks, Beth. Yeah, Dan Frazen over at CDA Emergency Management. Just appreciate this training. This is awesome. I know there are a lot of informal teams kind of across the state, so if they want to become more formal, we're definitely going to share this training out. This will be a link on our website once it's a webinar or officially a webinar and publishable, and we'll put it right next to the CART team map. So folks can, again, if they want to go from like that informal process to a more formal team, we'll be there to support them with your good info. Thanks for everything.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan. And like I said, Dan will be in California during our October Extension Forum, but Jerry will be there in person at our Thursday meeting. So if you guys have more questions for the CDA, or you're watching this after the webinar and you come up with questions for them and you just want to wait to talk to them in person, they'll be there that Thursday. So feel free to connect with them, figure out how they can assist you, especially like Dan said, if you have something that's more informal and you want to get it going a little bit more, they're great resources. Megan, do you have any questions or things you want to add from your experiences? Because Megan has also started her journey of a CART team, so.
Yeah, I think we have a bit of work to do. We had kind of a crash course a couple Octobers ago. We had a truck rollover south of town. So that's then that following spring, we had our first kind of formal training. And we didn't have as many people show up as we had hoped. We had a lot of people email or call or text that were interested, but when it came time to do the training and the FEMA courses, some of them kind of ran the other direction, I guess. But so I think recruitment's a big one for us, and then continued training. And actual, because we did a tabletop exercise. It was like a day and a half. We brought Scott Cotton down from Wyoming. And then we did, the weather was kind of nasty that weekend. We were gonna set up our livestock trailer, transport trailer, or corral system, I should say, and shoot just behind the courthouse, or the extension office here, but we ended up doing it at the fairgrounds in the livestock barn. But folks got to set it up so they could see that, and now I'd really like to get some a tabletop, I think, focused on small animals, and then yeah, some drills, some actual like hands-on exercises, because I think that's going to be where the bread and butter is at, to really get that experience. So lots to do, but it's good. We'll keep at it. So.
Well, good. Well, it sounds both positive and things to learn from, that's the name of the game, which I know you know, Megan. And yeah, if you want help with field exercises, how to set those up, like topics, let me know. Dan's really good with the tabletop stuff. He and I have done it was like a large animal one quite a few years ago, but we had a really good turnout with that. So I'm sure he'd be able to help you if you wanted to do more domestic pet. Or find partners, that might be better suited, that might be able to step in and help. So they're really good doing tabletops with. We've always had good turnouts doing it with a conjoined group. And then if anyone ever wants to join, we do a lot of trainings, like I said, in Pueblo. So I know, Megan, it's a little far for you. But if you're ever in Pueblo or anyone else is, you're always welcome to message me and see if there's a training up and coming. We have one this actual Saturday on hazmat. We have an animal hazmat trailer besides our cart trailer that we can deploy, and it's got animal-sized decon items, suits, the whole nine works. So we have a hazmat firefighter who's going to walk us through some of it. We'll actually put everything on. We'll use some live animals to walk them through some of the decon processes, and we'll talk biosecurity and all of that. So, but it's important to see that, because sometimes it's tough for people to realize what is a hot zone, what's a cold zone, how do you take boots off and seal it, that you can't wear leather, like all these things that you just don't necessarily think about in a normal sense. So we always chat about all that. So awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining today. We'll get this up and recorded, and then we'll send it out through the email for the emergency management team. And it's again, like I said, it's available to everybody. So you don't have to be with CSU or partner with us yet at this time to watch this or use any of the resources. And we'll also make the PowerPoint available. So if you want to use some of the slides, use some of the information in the videos, you're welcome to do that, as it can be very helpful in setting up conversations in your community. So thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day, and hopefully see quite a few of you in 2 weeks for our in-person meeting and training, where we're going to talk about a lot more of this. We're going to do some in-person how-to things, so where to find resources, how to use CDA in a real situation. It's also been brought up, but we'll talk a little bit about how do you keep yourself safe in certain situations. So we'll talk about some of that, dealing with the public. So we're going to walk through a lot of these bigger topics as a group during that particular meeting. So that's on Thursday, October 9th from 10:30 to noon at the Marriott Hotel in Fort Collins. So that's where that one is. And that calendar invite's been sent out. If you don't have it, please contact me. I'm happy to get it to you all, and we can chat that way. So thanks so much, everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks, Beth. Bye.
Bye.